Welcome to the Church of Perpetual Life, and we are streaming live from both Pompano Beach and Estes, Colorado, at a great Cryonics conference here. My name is Neil Bandry. I am your officiator, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the service this evening. If this is your first time joining with us, I'd like to invite you to join our email list so that you can get the newsletters every month, updates on all that's going on with super longevity, so that you may live a longer and healthier life. And you can join this simply by emailing me or go to the website at perpetual.life. We'll make sure you get those notices. Now, here at the Church of Perpetual Life, we are not a Bible-based church. Our members are Christians, Jewish, they're atheist, Buddhist, humanist, agnostic. In fact, we are the only brick and mortar transhumanist church in the world. And what brings us all together is a common desire to live an unlimited lifespan. Our services are once a month, and we have a virtual service again next month with Dr. Kumar in September. He'll be speaking on NAD+. Now in October, it gets even more exciting when we have a wonderful concert with Fairy Elaine Silver, along with a Halloween party that'll be on Tuesday, October the 24th, and then our regular service, October the 26th, again, that's the fourth Thursday of the month. October the 26th, we will have Ray Kurzweil and Charlie Cam, along with Bill Falloon. You definitely don't want to miss that. October the 26th will both be in person as well as virtually. Please join with me now as we recite the Perpetual Life Creed. We believe that all of life is sacred and that we have been given this one life to make unlimited. We believe in our Creator's divine plan for all of humanity to have infinite lifespans in perfect health and eternal joy, rendering death to be optional. By following our prophets, we achieve eternal life, creating a heaven here on earth. We follow Nikolai Fedorov, who taught that the transcendence of the Creator will only be solved when humanity, through our unified efforts, become an instrument of universal resuscitation. When the divine word becomes our divine action. And we follow Arthur C. Clarke, who said the only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. And so we enter each day energized in spirit and empowered by the words of our prophets to live in joy, serving our Creator and all of mankind forever and ever. This coming September, we have the RadFest. We have a short RadFest promotional for you. We'd like to show that video. Want more information about the RadFest? Go to www.radfest.com for details. It's more than just an immortality conference. It's amazing.
Some of you may remember the controversies about nuclear transfer, especially of human cells. And
to make it simple this is data from the National Library of Medicine, 2013.
Okay, so if this sounds expensive, it's because there's no charge, and I also do it in exchange for community service hours. For people who are not quite below.
Injections every 3 to 6 months, so we can do that much more frequently. When you do regular treatments, you can really make a huge.
Again, it's like Cryonics. You repair, you take away the good bacteria, you take away the bad bacteria, but you also take away the good bacteria when you do a colon therapy. So the
is probably getting better or worse over the last 20 years.
There we go. Ha! And ha! Little more volume. Ha! Like this. And we're just going to move down and up a little bit. Up and up. And if you want to.
So that's the Rad Fest. That's a sample of what you might be expecting. And, you know, there's so much that goes on there. And if you've never been, you don't know what you're missing. If you have any way to get to Anaheim, California, to get to the Rad Fest this year, I urge you to do it. Now it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening, and that's Rudi Hoffman. And he'll be speaking on new financial technology which can make cryonics easily affordable for you. Rudi Hoffman is a famous cryonics advocate, the author of the book, The Affordable Immortal. Rudi is a certified financial planner, a professional and an award-winning chartered life underwriter and chartered financial consultant. Rudi has been married to Dawn O'Connell Hoffman since 1984, and they are Daytona, Florida residents since 1978, where they are members of the Denim and Lace Square Dance Club. Rudi graduated cum laude Anderson University in Indiana, teacher of Warner Christian Academy in South Daytona, Florida. He's involved in financial services since 1980, and Rudi has helped more people arrange life insurance policies for cryonic suspensions than any other person in the world.
Hello, folks. I am honored and thrilled to be here. So I really want this to be fun and helpful and on point and potentially life-changing for you. So let me see where that camera is so I can eyeball you right, look right into your soul if those of us who are card-carrying atheists can still believe in souls. Basically, this is about you being an affordable immortal. And there's a couple of simple takeaways I want us all to get deeply into your consciousness. You guys are all very, very smart people. Let's start with that. Let's start with the fact that most of you are much more intelligent and accomplished than I am. But in one arena, I've really decided to focus, and that is the whole idea of making the idea of cryonics, which I think is one of the best ideas humanity's ever come up with. But we need to make sure that that is an accessible technology. So one, cryonics is a legitimate, scientifically valid life extension strategy. And the second is that it is generally affordable through special financial technology that we're going to talk about. This is not supposed to be mostly about me. It's supposed to be about you, but I do got a little. And Neil did a great job on that introduction. Thank you, Neil. But I do need to share a little bit about why this is so close to my heart and why you, frankly, should be listening to me in this particular arena. There's about 10,000 things, maybe 10 million things on the planet that I do not know about, that I'd love to know more about. But one thing I have delved into as deeply as I possibly can is the cryonics idea and how people can make that a real affordable part of their lives. My wonderful wife works with me and has for many, many years. We literally work together 24/7 and manage to stay in love most of the time. These are our dogs, and one of the reasons I wanted to show you this dog is this black dog, who I'm pointing to helpfully. You can't see that, but that black one is actually cryopreserved. The other one, Harry Potter, is kind of on the edge. She's 17 and a half now, and she's stayed home. But both my wife and I and our dogs are actually involved in cryonics. And there's about 64% of the human beings on the planet who have funded their cryopreservation, have done it with our help. We're licensed in nearly every state in the District of Columbia. Very importantly, very many people who are literally listening to this right now are already wonderful clients. And let me take a moment to genuinely thank you for your important trust in business and the feeling that you've put in me to help make cryonics real. And I suspect that some of you would also agree with this. I'm a strong believer that the future is going to be even better than the present. For many, in various ways, we've managed to establish some baselines. I think that we as a humanity can do better. And I want you, I want us, I want all of us. Many of you are, I consider, not just acquaintances. I consider you genuine, deep friends. And I'm honored to be sharing these ideas with you. I want all people to be able to know that it's possible to do what we can do here. I've written a couple books, and Jose, I know that you never miss an opportunity to promote your book, and I respect that about you. I probably ought to do a better job promoting mine. But basically, The Affordable Immortal took me 17 years to write, because I was trying to make it interesting and also take the two technologies of cryonics and the technology of finance and show how those combine to make this amazing package. And the other thing that even those of you who are already signed up for cryonics may move toward, like the second level, is the idea of doing cryonics estate planning, where basically some of us have structured programs to have dollars growing and compounding while you are in the cryopreservation process. So along with the attorney Peggy Hoyt, we wrote the Cryonics Estate Planning Handbook and published that recently. I don't know how many of you are Star Trek fans, but I know that if you ever come visit Dawn and I in our home in Fort Orange, Florida, our entire bedroom is, every single square centimeter has pictures of Star Trek people on it. And you may know one of the well-known tropes is Dr. McCoy saying, "He's dead, Jim." In the original version of this, I had a 2.5-minute clip of various iterations of "He's dead, Jim. He's dead, Jim. Jim, is this a dead man?" And it was pretty funny, but I didn't think it was worth 2.5 minutes. But basically, the reason that we put that in there is because I think it's such a silly disconnect. And perhaps some of you who are would agree with me on this. Think about, there's a technology in the 24th century where they can literally theoretically move people, scan them, and move them from place to place through the transporter. And yet somehow they think that you're alive one moment and the next moment you're irretrievably dead. So I would submit that's pretty silly. And let's move on from that. We obviously know what cryonics is. Basically, I'll define it as an experimental procedure that preserves living beings for the best available technology for the purpose of saving their future life. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The devil's in the details. However, we're going to get into a few of those. Right. So again, what was takeaway number one? That cryonics is indeed a legitimate life extension strategy. We are obviously involved. It is trying to do as many legitimate life extension strategies as we possibly can. And there is, unfortunately, a bit of a disconnect with some people who are involved in anti-aging or life extension age reversal, in which they basically, thank you, it's better, think, well, maybe, cryonics is, if I sign up for cryonics, maybe I'm not really serious about anti-aging. I would submit just the opposite. If you are not signed up for Cryonics, if you have not tried to figure out a way to see what could be done, you are probably not as serious about your anti-aging legitimate life extension programs as you need to be. This is not an optional thing for serious cryonicists and serious life extensionists. It is really, it's one of the tools that is perhaps, and may be the tool for many of us who maybe are not 22 years old. This, I love this slide. Some of you have seen this before. The guy that does Wait But Why, named Tim Urban, has this wonderful blog, and 600,000 people follow Tim Urban, and I'm glad to say he finally did get signed up for Cryonics. He had done this article that was, quite frankly, better than any article that I'd ever done on Cryonics. Was a little annoying, but he's a really terrific writer. And the article said, "Why Cryonics Makes Sense." And it had this marvelous cartoon in it, which has kind of been the human condition for as long as most of us can remember. People simply going off the edge of death, going off the cliff. Now, some of these people might have in their little round heads some various religions or superstitions that maybe that's not going to really be meaningful death to them. They're going to go up to some kind of woo-woo place in the sky. I submit, sorry if I'm offending anybody, you're probably not in touch with hard egg science if you think that's going to save you. The guy that I shared my next door neighbor on the plane coming here this morning, wonderful man, sweet, wonderful Georgia man, but he had a Christian book about why you should only be happy with Jesus Christ. And he was we had a wonderful conversation about his woodworking skills and all that. But I realized from a foundationally a philosophical standpoint, trying to discuss things that basically ideas about how you really get to truth, we need to not be tied to the superstitions of the past. And I don't mean to be offending anybody who's horribly religious, but I submit that the human progress occurs as we deal with the thing called reality. Reality is typically defined by a thing called science, and science informs technology and improves every bit of the human experience. This is not the way that we want things to go. Instead, we want some kind of a bridge, and that bridge is indeed the idea of cryonics. And you'll hear that metaphor again and again, but this is a good cartoon that explains that. Now, I would love to show you cats and rats and dogs and human beings who've actually come back from full cryonic temperature. Obviously, that would be really, really compelling and make me a great TED Talk presenter. I want to do a wonderful TED Talk, but the reality is the science is not quite there where we can prove that yet. But what we do have is some very strong proof of principles that make sense and I think will relate to you. This is new, and I'm hopefully this is going to show you'll like this 2-minute video.
These are the wood frogs that were caught last night. They've spent the whole winter on the forest floor, and most of that time they were frozen solid. I'm sure these frogs thought that they were all done with freezing for the year, but unfortunately they're not. We're putting them back in the freezer today.
The freezer is set at 8 degrees below freezing, roughly the temperature of the ground in winter. In a matter of hours, they'll be hard as rocks.
We have fully frozen Rana sylvatica wood frogs. They're probably 50–60% ice now. And their hearts are stopped, their brains are flatlined, their limbs can't be moved, they would be broken off. Yet they're still alive. You can see one that's completely frozen still that we've just taken out. It's hard and crunchy. Whatever situation they were in last, they'll freeze in. This one's legs are frozen up, and it's very hard and crunchy.
But the most amazing thing is the fact that the wood frog comes back to life. over a couple of hours, it makes a miraculous and complete recovery. Immortality might be ours if we could manage to do the same.
Wow. Okay. And so that is, I love that video. The reason that we have that video is because one of the cryonicist that some of us know, and he has actually done some remarkable things to bring mainstream funding and government funding into the cryopreservation of organs, human organs, and the Organ Preservation Alliance gentleman who will hopefully be able to have him speak at the Church Perpetual Life, because he has one of the most compelling presentations I've ever seen. It's just 8 or 10 minutes long, but it had that 2-minute video with the frogs, and I had to go add that to my presentation. So basically, we know that traditional cryobiology has been freezing sperm, has been freezing eggs, has been frozen basically ovum, which are fertilized eggs. And basically, these have gone to, there's thousands of people walking today that are basically a function of, were frozen. One of the questions that we obviously have, well, is brain pattern preserved when we are cryopreserved? That obviously is the big factor. Or is the incredible amount of literally trillions of connections and synapses in the brain able to be preserved? We have multiple ways that we think are good to show that under better ideal circumstances, the answer is yes. One of those is a research paper that was published by Natasha Vita-Moore and her colleagues that basically showed that if you happen to be a C. elegans worm, we know we can preserve your brain pattern. These worms are pretty small, but they are still multicellular organisms, and they can be trained to do simple things. They don't sit up and beg, but they can be trained to go left or right on a T-square. And the important point is that after cryopreservation, they remembered their training. The other very important proof of concept, of course, is the fact that in mainstream medicine, it cools people down for surgeries. Some of you may have people you know, or maybe have personally had some type of surgery that was done under cryosurgery. And turns out that people, especially kids who have been in ice or under snow, have been dead and then came back. In many cases, they're quite frankly, it's not an ideal circumstance, obviously. But this guy came back after about being dead for something like half hour, 45 minutes and his brain was okay. So this is not an ideal archetypal cryopreservation by any means. But again, we're talking about simple proof of concept that we know is real right now. And here, just think about it a moment from a back away and look at the common sense that we all know. I suspect wherever you're sitting in the world right now, you're probably not more than a few hundred meters from a magical tool that basically cools things down called a refrigerator. It's an amazing piece of technology that most of us take for granted, but we shouldn't. And what it does is it slows biological deterioration as things cool down. So we know that is the case. Changes our lives in many ways. Turns out that if you take away the refrigeration that's made modernity, a lot of bad things would happen. But that same technology can now be used to maybe save your life, and that's important. You probably, if you've been around cryopreservation or even anti-aging people, or you may have seen this slide. Professor Dr. Greg Fahey made this slide rather famous. It's a distinction between a biological organism being frozen, in which there's quite, to be fair, a lot of iced damage. And all of us know that if you put a strawberry in the freezer and freeze it, it's not the same as a fresh strawberry. And there are some unfortunate examples of people who are kind of thought leaders like Michio Kaku, who really ought to know better, to be fair, but who have said, well, cryopreservation and cryonics is just not going to be good because everybody knows that there's biological damage to biological tissues when things go below 0 C. Well, obviously, Michio, we do know that, and we're trying to attenuate that damage with the process we call vitrification that most of you know is simply the idea of utilizing a cryoprotective agent that permeates through the cell, even down to the intracellular level, into the organelles, and basically and glassifies things in exactly the kind of slow, like liquid. Imagine liquid slowly getting syrpier and syrpier, and eventually gets turned into like a glass. That is the process of vitrification, and it reduces ice damage to pretty much 0 if there's proper molarity of vitrification or CPA. But there's some other types of damage that are still occurring when we rewarm the kidney or rewarm the entity. But the whole idea being that vitrification is a huge step forward in reducing and virtually eliminating damage from the cryonics process. There's a whole lot of very smart people throughout the planet that are working on the technical problems of cryopreservation. And I'm so proud to be affiliated with so many of these marvelous people, and you should be as well. Some of you are deeply involved in and have been known about these organizations. Alcor obviously has been around 52 years. Cryonics is actually huge in China. There's a couple of major cryonics organizations that are very, very active in China that spoke at our International Cryonics Conference that Neil and I did. Bravo, Neil. The Cryonics Institute, as most of you know, is based in Detroit, Michigan. Their associate general meeting is coming up September the 9th. 21st Century Medicine is, I believe, still in Rancho Cucamonga, but as well as other places. And that is continuing to be funded primarily by Bill Falloon, I believe, and Bill Falloon's organizations. CryoRus is still happening. They've had a few challenges between us chickens. You probably know the Suspended Animation is one of the cryotransport organizations that basically handles the mechanics of getting you from where you are to where you need to be with medical integrity, doing what's called the standby, the SST. Basically, what they do is make sure that they try to get you and cool you down before transport, and do the process in a medically viable, legitimate manner. Organ Preservation Alliance is just an incredible organization they convene symposia that have major big pharma money as well as DARPA money behind research. And quite frankly, I was shocked to find how much research is going on behind the scenes that most of us, even involved in cryonics, do not really know about. And when Sebastian Giwa, I'll mention his name, can do his presentation, I think you'll be blown away by how much great research is occurring behind the scenes, especially in the organ preservation arena, because obviously organ preservation is viewed as a public good that does not have some of these curious baggage that cryonics does. So you also may know that there was an open letter that scientists wrote that says, basically, we believe there's a good, credible possibility that cryonics can work. And so all that is to talk about the legitimacy of cryonics today, not even talking about what might be happening soon. But let me take a minute back. Let's step back for a moment and say, well, if it worked for sure, if we could actually bring 100% of every human being who is cryopreserved back, but it was $10 million, that would be probably a moot point for most of us. And I submit that the cost component is one of the big factors why this idea is not taking the world by a storm, because most people, one, do not know that cryonics is even an available option. And even if they do know it's an available option, they don't understand that they could very possibly afford it without too much of a problem. And this is what I have committed my business life to, is sharing the fact that the cryonics for many people, not everyone, but for many people is affordable, typically through the leverage of a thing called life insurance. You got to understand leverage. It's a thing that makes the world go round. It's a thing that makes when you can makes a small amount of movement transmitted to you can move the earth. If there's a well-known saying, if you give me a place to stand on and a lever long enough, it'll move the earth. So leverage is an important idea. So there's a financial leverage that we can engage in through a thing called life insurance. It's pretty amazing. So it turns out that most folks do use life insurance. Not everybody, but most people who do their cryopreservation utilize the amazing leverage of life insurance. And let me just go into that. So basically, there's a couple factors. One, you do need to be insurable. And that is not everybody. If you've got huge health problems, you're probably not insurable. And it's a different way we'll talk about in a minute. And to be fair, there's also, in addition to the life insurance cost, there are also membership dues at the cryonics organizations. Alcors are $15 per year of life. So if you're 30 years old, that's $450 a year. First year, it's half of that. The Cryonics Institute dues are substantially lower, $120 a year, or you can pay a one-time $1,250 lifetime membership lifetime membership, in which case there's no further dues at all at the Cryonics Institute. So that is that piece. So I've put together some actual examples. And while these people are not the real people, but these are actual real world numbers with real human beings who have actually signed up with these numbers. So I want to make this as practical, as pragmatic, as relevant as I possibly can to you, so you can say, hey, this could work. And let's say a 27-year-old. Here's a 27-year-old. A whole bunch of our young 20 and 30 somethings who are signed up for cryonics are just incredibly brilliant folks who are maybe getting their second or third PhD, and they're researchers. They're getting started in life, and maybe they're basically what they need to do, but they're very interested in cryonics. There's a thing called term life insurance. Term life insurance is level for a term or period of time. It's perfect for lots of things we buy life insurance for, but it's not really ideal for cryonics eventually. But it's not a bad idea to start with, especially if you're young, to start with an upgradable term. That's what this guy does. Here he is. His name is Dan. And Dan can buy a 20-year level term that's also upgradable, which means he can change it into a permanent policy. And he can get $400,000 for $344 a year. So you could pay it, monthly. That's less than $1 a day to be a fully funded cryonaut. Got some other different people at different ages here. Here's a 29-year-old software engineer. By the way, about 60-70% of our cryonics clients are software engineers. And there's a thing called Index Universal Life that basically is probably the optimal cryonics funding mechanism. It's a permanent policy that's designed to be in place to and past age 120, but instead of being a traditional whole life, it's because there's a higher growth on the cash accumulation component. The premium is about half or 2/3 of the cost of a traditional whole life policy. And because there's a higher growth rate on that cash accumulation part of your policy, the cash grows and accumulates a big boatload of money that you don't have to die to get. So in this case, for instance, their 29-year-old is paying $185 a month for a $300,000 Index Universal Life policy. That cash accumulation, that's the part you don't have to die to get, although it's also available as a death benefit, is a $1.7 million at age 100. People say, well, Rudy, those dollars will be inflated. Well, yeah, they will be, but no matter how, even if they are inflated, it'd be nice to have a couple million of them. So the cash accumulation part of that policy is a relevant factor. And, as people age, obviously the cost of the life insurance does go up. But once you buy your policy, it locks in. But Lucy waited a little long. Now she's 45. But she's a healthy non-smoker. She can buy a universal life. And maybe there's different ways of paying these policies off. And lots of times business owners or developers, they want a policy that's permanent, that's paid, that they also don't want to just have the hassle of making the payments. And they're also smart enough to realize if they get the policy paid off, then they don't have to worry about, is it going to be there when I need it? They don't have to worry about, will I be able to continue to fund this thing in the future? So I showed us some options here for what's called a paid off policy. So she could do a single payment of $65,000. Maybe she sells a property and puts $65,000 in this policy, and it's paid off. She walks away. That $65,000 has not gone away. It's growing in the cash value, but she doesn't have to pay anything more into it. I know at least some of you in here, Brooke Norton, are doing another smart thing where you're basically paying it off over like a 7 period, 5 or 7 years. $12,000 a year pays that policy off in 7 years. Or she could pay it annually, $2,600. So, and of course, even if, let's say, some of us have gotten a little bit older. And I used to think 70 sounded a little old, but it turns out 70 is not sounding that old right now. But what happens if turns out that it still may make sense to use the leverage of life insurance? For instance, Wes is 70. And he's looking to get $160,000 of coverage, which would cover his either Alcor neuropreservation or the Cryonics Institute full package that includes the Cryonics Institute and also includes suspended animation group funding and also includes private air ambulance. That full package is well covered with $160,000, a little bit over for future cost increases. Well, it's at age 70, it's a little premium, a little higher in cost, $7,700, which is a non-trivial amount of money. But it still makes more sense than maybe redirect than having $160,000 in cash. So now I want to go into the new big deal that has really been changing the way that people are looking at cryopreservation. Because some people, for various reasons, either cannot get life insurance or don't want to get life insurance, or they simply want to get their policy, their credits paid. And imagine if there was a way that you could simply redirect some of the funds that you might have in your IRA dollars, in your 401k rollover, your 457 program, or maybe your long-term savings. You got some money you've been working and saving and sitting around. And maybe it's in a mutual fund, or maybe it's in an index fund. Maybe it's in the bank at 2 or 3 or 4%. All those things, by the way, are at risk. If you could redirect those funds, it turns out, we can now give you a guaranteed death benefit, which means that the Cryonics organizations know that the funding is going to be there, so they have approved this. Both Alcor and the Cryonics Institute boards have approved this new funding variable annuity because the death benefit is absolutely guaranteed and certain, irrespective of the actual growth on the account. But here's what's exciting. People say, well, yeah, I'd have to redirect my funds, and I'm pretty happy where it's at right now. What if there were a way that you could redirect those funds and get even a better growth rate than you may be getting now? This is where it gets a little bit technical. It's not super technical, but if you can lean in and look at your screen, because this is really the kind of the bottom line that is enabling a lot of people to now get signed up for cryopreservation that we were not able to help before. And I promise you that is really, really important for the whole movement. This is an actual illustration showing how $100,000 redirected for cryopreservation would have provided a guaranteed death benefit to do the cryopreservation, but also enables that money to grow for you probably better than it's growing right now. So let me prove that to you. This is what's called a variable annuity, which is simply a program that provides a tax benefits and maybe some additional riders. In this case, the additional rider guarantees the amount we put in, $100,000 in this illustration, that guarantees that death benefit is $100,000 plus 5% each year increasing, or the highest quarterly growth of the underlying investment account. There's a guarantee of on the amount you put in of the principal. The death benefit is guaranteed to be 5% growing on that each year, or the highest quarterly growth on the actual investments, which in this case are in, look in the upper left corner here. Some of you are aware of there's mutual funds called American funds, and many of you are aware that index investing beats the indexes beat most mutual funds. That's a big dirty secret of the financial planning profession. Changed my life when I found that out, by the way. So anyway, it turns out the NASDAQ has done pretty well, and you can actually invest in there's very low costs involved here. And we'll show you what those costs are. You put the 100,000 in there, 100,000 goes to work from day one, which is pretty good. So none of it goes to a commission or to pay the company. There is, however, a surrender charge if you yank everything out in the early couple years. There's a decreasing 7-year surrender charge that is the difference between the contract value. See that as 107,000 of the contract value the first year. But if you yank everything out, you'd get $99,389. So that the distinction there is that what's called the surrender schedule that decreases a little bit each year for the first 7 years, and after 7 years, the numbers are the same. So this is a historical back testing. What that means is we've gone back in a time machine to 2005, put the 100,000 in there, and these are the actual numbers. This is not theoretical. It's technically called a hypothetical illustration, but it actually shows the real world. And I wanted to show you not the goodies. What you want is a financial planner or broker or an advisor who tells you everything, who tells you the good and the bad. And in this case, the bad is the actual investments are in the NASDAQ 100 and some mutual funds, and it's possible that could take a big drop. Look what happened in 2008. It's going here good for a while, 107, 117,000, 142,000. But then 2008 comes along, boom. The S&P 500, the 500 most successful companies on the planet, lose 44% that year. So there's a 44% drop, which means that cash accumulation drops on to 79,000. Boo, hiss. But here's the idea behind this account. Take a look over on the right. The death benefit locked in at 142,000. That's why this is kind of magic. There's no underwriting on this. I've got people who had literally cancer, cardiovascular issues, couldn't get them life insurance. We can get them this. There's no underwriting on it. You can get it up to age 80. We can't get it past age 80. We hope to eventually get it. They've been talking about maybe bumping it up to age 85, but right now 80 is the limit. There's no limit on the lower end. You can do it if you're 3 years old if you got $100,000. But here's what's interesting. Let me cut to the chase here. I know I got a little technical on this, and I apologize. But here's the bottom. Look at the bottom line. That 100,000 goes up and goes down, but the death benefit does not go down. It goes up. The cash accumulation grows to 511,000. That's the bottom number there. That's your money. This is your money. It's all growing in your account. You've not lost control of it. Now, the Cryonics organization is the irrevocable beneficiary. So if you die, we know they get it. It doesn't go to your wife or kids. But if they only need 250,000 of it and you got 511, you can pull the rest out. So basically, any amount not needed by the cryopreservation organization, you can redirect for you. The actual net return, net after all expenses have already been figured in, is that lower left-hand corner there, 10.29%. Net return averaged over 16 years. I submit to you that's better than the vast majority of human beings are doing on their investments. So that is kind of exciting. And I think that has worked for a lot of people, especially those who don't want to, who are maybe up in years or they have some health issues and do not qualify or do not want to go through the hoops to get life insurance. So that hopefully will resonate. And we're winding up here. I know that you guys have been great. Thank you very much for your kind attentions. And I hope this has been crystal clear. The actual mechanics, and I would not be doing you a service if I did not let you know a next step that you may want to consider. And this may not be for you, quite frankly. I cannot say that cryonics is for everybody. Some people can't afford it. Some people don't want to afford it. But I would submit that you probably owe it to yourself and your family and people you care about to find out what the actual situation may be. And you can do that without any obligation whatsoever. Here's how you do it. You go to rudihoffman.com. There's a little website that says, ask for some basic information so we can do some research and get some numbers to you to see what may be doable. And the whole idea here again is that Cryonics is a bridge. I love this picture. And we want you, and I do mean you, to join us in the incredible future that is possible. And possibly through this technology, hopefully that will work out well. Rudi Hoffman, and here endeth our presentation.
I wanted to reiterate that what cryonics really is, it's an ambulance to the future. It's a way to be able to, if you have a disease that cannot be cured now, this is a way to go into the future and to be able to not only reverse aging in the future, but also to find cures for those diseases. Let's go into this, and Rudy's back. I'm going to share a chair here with you, Rudy. Come on over to this side.
I'm honored to share a chair, and hopefully we got some good questions.
Here we have on YouTube live stream, what options are there for Europeans? Rudi.
Oh, that is a good question. The answer probably right now is to look at the European Biostasis Organization tomorrow Biostasis. It's with Emil's organization it's the fastest growing cryonics organization there is. I don't know. And Emil Kadzioro is doing a spectacular job. He and his group of half a dozen super brilliant people based in Berlin, and they have capabilities throughout most of West Europe, and the way they've structured their funding is really kind of slick. Quite frankly, it's slicker than we could do here right now. They've put together a package that covers both the cryopreservation and the funding. It's not a permanent policy, it's a term policy, but it means that the actual cost for like a 35-year-old might be in the area of 40 or 50, 60 bucks a month. It's very typically affordable, especially for folks under age 45. I don't know how the cost would be higher than that, but Tomorrow Biostasis is the people to check with.
Great.
David Croft, who I love. Hi, David. And David Croft, being a super smart guy, as many of you are, understands that the indexing, basically using the indexes instead of a individual team or individual who picks stocks in a mutual fund. It turns out that the institutions, people like Harvard and Yale, their endowment funds that have literally hundreds of billions and billions in them, are often going to what's called passive investing, basically investing in index lookalike funds that have lower costs. And that's why when I showed you that illustration, I did use one fund, an American fund that's actually been pretty great, but I also used an index fund, the NASDAQ 100, that simply mirrors the top 100 stocks in the NASDAQ index. And so the observation by David Croft that indexing is typically a very smart long-term strategy is well understood and well agreed with. Thank you for that, David.
What do you think we can do as cryonicists to bring this to the mainstream public, for people to be talking about cryonics rather than being buried and being embalmed or being, burnt
Yes,
up?
that obviously is a question that's been on many of our minds and hearts for some years. And I think we are part of the whole idea here is that if we can get out the message, not only that cryonics is a legitimate intervention, instead of simply burning yourself or rotting in the ground, and equally importantly, that it's often affordable through the tech, through life insurance or annuities, that will help the idea catch on. And so anything that you guys can do to promote that meme set in the spheres of influence that you have, and that may be one niece, it may be one nephew, it may be your child, it may be your father, but many of us have influence. And my encouragement to people, and I guess I'm writing an article that hopefully will come out in the Biostasis Standard, the new magazine, the electronic magazine that's being developed by Ashwin and Max Moore. And that article talks about the fact that one of the reasons why cryonics has not caught on is not just that we can't prove that it works, but because it's viewed as non-affordable. And so we got to pound the drum on the affordability component of cryonics. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. The important thing to remember is that we are science-oriented. This is not some kind of a faith-based system where you check your skeptical credentials at the door and have to drink the Kool-Aid to buy into the corporate culture issue. We want you to remain skeptical. Though even those of us who are signed up for cryonics are skeptical. But we realize, hey, cryonics may or may not work, but there's a very good possibility it will, especially if we do everything we can to be smart about it. And here's a big question. Will it work better than going in the ground and having worms eat you? Will it work better than being burned to a crisp? Well, I can guarantee you that is a given yes. So basically, we want to send us forward to a future technology that can solve the technical issues related to bringing back our brain structure in ourselves. And that is when we can already bring back some organs, not quite consistently yet, but people say, Rudi, what is the status of organ cryopreservation? Do we have it? Well, we have it if you're a rat, if you're a rabbit, if you're a rat. It helps you have small organs. Basically, the part of our bodies are big heat sinks. Getting the heat out of a big fat organ like a spleen in a human is challenging. So it's surprisingly technically difficult to do, even with a single organ, much less a full human being. So, there's no barriers to it happening, other than the fact that there's still technical concerns about it happening. So basically, the Organ Preservation Alliance presentation that hopefully we will see, we've got to get Seb doing that presentation. That will absolutely blow your mind about how much research is being done kind of behind the scenes by big pharma, by DARPA, by mainstream organizations who have big money behind them, because they know that it's very important. It will save 100,000 lives in America alone to have cryopreserved organs. Obviously, the commercial part of this is that I am in the investments and life insurance business. I'll be fine with or without your business, to be fair. I don't mean to sound arrogant about that, but I've been doing this for 46 years. I've been doing cryonics insurance for 29 years. After a lot of years of dues paying, we've kind of got some things where I literally don't have to work for money, but I want to work because I want to make sure that people understand what they can do. And how sad would it be for you to miss 15, 20 years from now, we may have anti-aging that'll be spectacular and super affordable and work, and not just keep you where you're at, but make everything work in your whole body and your whole brain. How sad would that be to just miss that And we want to have you have Cryonics get these bracelets on your wrist. I got 2 of them because I believe in defense in depth. And I'm also a member of both Alcor and the Cryonics Institute as a backup. So that's our, and I have 11 policies totaling $3 million life insurance, along with a couple $1 million. So we want to make sure this thing is pretty well funded. So the bottom line is, if you want to, fill out that website form, rudihoffman.com, please know that does not mean you're obligated or you're definitely going to do something. It just means you'd like to find out what the deal is. And one of the things that Neil had asked about, how can we find a way to ease these barriers to entry? One of those is for people to understand they can find out what the options are without any obligation or any concern that this may not be a fit right now.
Your process of doing things just helped me it was so easy to do.
Thank you.
And,
I appreciate that. It's not as seamless as we'd like it yet, but it's a whole lot better than it used to be. The process of you getting life insurance is not just figuring out what the cost and the options ought to be, but we do have to have underwriting, which means it's smart to do it early. And a lot of people you are younger and say, yeah, I can put this off for a while. I'm fine now. I don't need that now because I'm not sick. You want to get your life insurance when you're well. You buy life insurance with your good health as well as your investment funds. And yay, Paul Batista says, thanks to Rudy, I've been signed up with the Cryonics Institute for the last 24 years, Paul? Oh my goodness. We got to give you some kind of award for being one of the longest clients ever. Whoa.
And Rudy just helped my son to get signed up. He was going to go to the teens to 20s, but was unable to make it this year. But we're looking forward to John coming to the teens to 20s event soon.
Outstanding. Yeah. Karen's got a big smile on her face about the teens and 20s being mentioned.
So let's talk about those teens to 20s just for a moment. This is a gathering of young people, teens and 20-year-olds who get together once a year to talk about cryonics, to meet each other, to give presentations, to just get together and to remind each other what it's all about. It's a great group, a wonderful group of young people, and I'm looking forward to seeing them again soon.
How many folks do you have signed to the teens and 20s, Karen?
I think there's a total of 40 people at the event, roughly. Yeah.
Excellent. That's very good. Part makes sense so that people understand that's, what, and it's better to do that than cash funding. People say, well, I got the cash, so I guess give that to the Cryonics organization. Yes, you can do that, but no, you shouldn't, because it's plain old-fashioned stupid. Here's why. The lost interest that you have, basically, if you want to fund cash with Alcor, for instance, you write them a check for $240,000 now for full body. So let's think about this. That what they do is they put it in a money market account because it has to be liquid, basically. They put it in a money market account at 2%. In contrast, you could average 7%. I can give you a 7% risk-free guaranteed. So there's a 5% delta or distinction there. 5% on 240,000 over 12,000 a year that you're losing in opportunity cost. And so it's just simply, if you're going to do the cash funding, it makes sense to put it where the money can grow at an average of 10.29% we saw. And that's much better than 2. Oh,
yes,
okay. Sorry, Jose.
Please bring Jose in.
Well, first of all, congratulations, Rudy. I have had the pleasure to know you for many years now, and I admire your passion and all you are doing. Also, what you are writing, because I love your book, the first book, The Affordable Immortal, and I helped to translate it into Spanish. So it is a great book that it should be read by many people. And my question is about what is happening now in cryonics and other technologies related, because some people are beginning to use biostasis. Biostasis, which is a wider name, and cryonics is only a part of it, because there are other technologies like plastination, vitrification, persuflation, and many other things that we are probably going to be discovering. So, and that might be cheaper, actually, cheaper. The price by the Brain Preservation Foundation, it was much cheaper than cryonics. So What do you think of these technologies and also cheaper technologies coming up?
And I've been following the work of the Brain Preservation Foundation for many years. I think they're doing good and important work. I wish they were not taking the cheap shots against current cryonics that they are. And I won't go any further details on that. My attitude, and I suspect all the attitude that I would think we should all have, is that we let 1,000 flowers bloom. We need research going on in multiple directions because this is not an easy problem. We're not pretending that freezing a full human being and bringing him back is non-technical or is trivial. But so that's why we need as many labs working at it as possible. What the path that's actually I think will be emerging is that the organ cryopreservation research, which is again being funded by Big Pharma, will lead the path toward this as a proven technology. And when all of a sudden there's organ banking that all major hospitals have, and your uncle's got a kidney that was cryopreserved and it's working fine, it works better than any other transplants because it was the exact right fit, then that idea will naturally progress to, well, of course, if we can cryopreserve the organ, we can cryopreserve the brain and the other balance of humanity. So I think we should have as many research things going as possible. I support them and endorse them all, as long as they are legitimate endeavors, not some kind of scammy face bait. What we do not want is bad actors in this space. And that's something that we need to police as a community to the best of our abilities. Was that responsive, Jose?
Yes, very good. Thank you. And
there is a question.
congratulations.
Yes,
Congratulations.
thank you. I appreciate your kind words. Jose, Jose and I have a marvelous mutual admiration society. I do have a nice question here from Jamie. Are there any companies working in the science part of freezing the body correctly so it will not damage the cells? The short answer is yes. Some of those that we saw, 21st Century Medicine has just expanded their labs in California, and they also are working in developing some things in South Florida, I believe. We'll be hearing more about. All the labs that are working on organ cryopreservation are trying to figure out how we can not damage those cells, 100% of the cells back. But obviously we want to find a way to have as little insult, little damage as possible. The backstory on that, to give you a little more, Jamie, is that even though we can vitrify and preserve things in a very correct, precise manner on the way down, cooling-wise, when it's being rewarmed, it goes through this process of basically annealing, or there's a differentiation between the warming rates that can damage things, and then if you get liquid water running around causing ice damage in the rewarming process, that can mess things up. So there's several sets of damage that need to be dealt with to have fully reversible cryopreservation.
And the question, or rather comment from David, is that if you paid cash years before you died, you would not have to worry about your relatives contesting the life insurance after you die. Now, there's certain issues with people from time to time.
Could I respond to that, David? Because that is a what I would call a common myth. Mm-hmm. People say, well, by paying cash for my cryopreservation, I'm going to be safer. Actually, the historical reality is just the opposite. Cash lump sums look like targets for family members. In contrast, life insurance annuities create that money outside the estate, go directly to the named beneficiary, and your family can be hopping mad about cryonics, and it does not make a difference. If your family's hopping mad about cryonics and you paid cash, they do what many folks have done, unfortunately, with Alcor, where they sue Alcor for the money. And that delays things. That is one of the reasons why there's been some rather horrific, unfortunate cryopreservations due to the contest that occurred on that cash, because a lump sum of cash is perceived as a much easier target and a lawsuit magnet, much more so than a life insurance policy, which creates the extra money. The annuity does not create the extra money, but it's still outside of probate. It goes directly to the named beneficiary, irrespective of what your will says. Your will says all my assets go to my wife. But if your life insurance, your life insurance or your annuity has a beneficiary that says it all goes to Alcor, it all goes to Alcor. Period. End of story.
The other thing, if you were paying cash, could that be a security against price increases in the future?
No, that's the other misunderstanding about cash. If you pay Alcor $240,000 today, and it's $500,000 when it's state of the art cryopreservation 20 years from now, unless your money has grown, you're going to have to pony up more money. So, lump summing cash does not lock in the inflation or technological enhancement cost increases. So in some cases, cash is king. But if you got the cash, you can put it into an annuity that deadbeat inflation. So all of a sudden, if 100,000 grows to 500,000 in 16 years, that dramatically beats both inflation and dramatically beats Cryonics cost inflation.
How about this? If you were to pay cash up front, it would give the Cryonics businesses cash now rather than to later on. In other words, they could use it for.
I hate to have you setting these wonderful questions up for me to say no on, David, but thank you. That's another misunderstanding, because they can't access that cash. They basically have to put it in a money market. It's not their money. They cannot use it. There have been some other structures in which you basically, if you're trying to help your Cryonics organization get wealthy, invest your money wisely, like we showed, and give them the extra $300,000 you don't need, but don't give them to it and let them put it in a money market at 2%.
And David was pointing out that Cryonics
there's a life
and
deal.
Alcor both have lifetime.
I would be happy to see this.
We're going to look into that. We're going to be meeting with Alcor people here in just a couple days.
They will. I know that one time there was a way that you could do they were looking at a Alcor dues, single payment on the dues, which was going to be like $20,000 or $25,000, and even they decided that it was not enough.
Now we're talking about Alcor and Cryonics Institute all through this, and the reason is that they are the two leading organizations in the world. But there are so many, as Rudi pointed out, there are so many other organizations, and I'm sure over the next decade we're going to see even more emerge. But seeing that Alcor and the Cryonics Institute are the leading organizations, and this mysterious group in China that seems to be doing amazing work, we are going to remain focused on seeing all of the things that are coming to light, bringing good things to light.
Absolutely, and thank you for that correction. And if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to be wrong. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rudi, and I just want to...
And thank you all for your kind attentions, and hopefully this will be of benefit and a win-win all the way around.
And I want to remind all of those who are in the YouTube live streaming, if you want to join our Zoom after party, you can do so. The Zoom party will go until whenever. And also remind you all that we do have a service next month. That's the fourth Thursday in September. Again, the fourth Thursday in October. That's when we'll be having our next services. Next month, we have Dr. Kumar on NAV+. And in October, we have Ray Kurzweil, Charlie Cam, and I'm sure Bill Falloon will want to give an AG reversal update. Don't forget also, we have a concert at the church with a Halloween party on the Tuesday preceding. It's great to see you all and look forward to seeing you all at future events. Thanks for coming.
Yay!